soaring.
I hope Riley doesn't drop out, but he did say that he cut down a tree or something, and now his Starlink is working better.
Just had to do a little lumberjacking.
I was gonna say Riley just had to become a lumberjack.
Yeah, no trees were harmed in the moving of my Starlink dish.
Oh, that's good. Oh, right, you just moved the dish, so you had to get back on the roof again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was just crawling around on my roof, moving.
It
dishes.
is funny to imagine you crawling around on just scurrying around on the roof I'm imagining you with your hair down and it's really windy.
Oh yeah.
And then he's moving real fast.
Yeah, he's skittering. Yeah, he skitters around up there. Okay, well, we're gonna start the show. It's Turn 1 Soul Ring. Welcome. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Eric.
I'm Riley.
And we have our editor, Ainsley, joining us once again.
Hello, I'm Ainsley once again.
Hi, Ainsley, once again.
Hi, Riley. Buddy.
Yeah, that's right. You two don't have a lot of opportunity to be on the show together.
No, you're trying to keep us apart,
Yeah.
and I don't understand why.
Well, that's why when he comes over, I try to get him down the basement as quickly as possible. It's and he just
Your
wants to chat.
hair is just too luxurious.
Yeah, it's getting very long. We were talking about that before we started recording. But as you may have guessed, probably from the title, but by Ainsley's presence, we are continuing to explain the story behind the cards. We're continuing our lore series today.
Lore.
So over the following, you can say that for the end. Over the following several episodes, we'll be explaining the events depicted in the novel Rath Storm. So this novel picks up basically where Bloodlines ends, which was the last novel we covered. Yes, it was. It was originally the first novel in the Weatherlight cycle, or book 1 in the Weatherlight cycle, but WotC later 86th that whole cycle, and then this novel became a standalone novel. It was originally published in 1998, July 1998, and it's an anthology containing stories from various writers, and like most of these books, it's currently out of print.
Dope.
So this novel follows the crew of the Weatherlight as they travel to Rath to rescue their captain. And I know we've made a habit of introducing new characters when we've started one of these series of episodes, but because this novel is mostly going to be new characters, we'll fill you in when they get introduced to the story. And I also think taking that approach is a little more fun. It's like, who's this? Ooh.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're reading the book with me.
Yeah. Stop depriving us of fun.
I really tried to do that, but I'm learning along with all of you. I've never done this before. Except the times I've done it before, but you know what I mean. It's a learning.
Okay.
This is a learning experience for all of us. This is totally total DIY operation.
It's like when you lie about losing your virginity. Don't just be honest. You've done it before. It's all good.
that's not something people generally lie about, right?
I think girls more than boys.
You know what? That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. Mm-hmm. He was my first. Yeah.
Anywho.
So just
anyways,
another quick note about this novel. I thought it was a really good read. It is an anthology with each character having their own tale, they call it. So you have like Gerard's tale and Karn's tale, and even the Weatherlight itself has a tale. But what I really liked about it is half of each of these tales is the present. So the trip to Rath to rescue Captain Sisay, but the other half of the story is the characters' past, and they're interspliced. So it's sort of like when you read a Stephen King novel, and it's like 1, and then 2. It's sort of just broken up like that, but they're not chapters. They're sort of like chapters within chapters. But now that I think about it, this book actually doesn't have chapters. It just goes from like tale to tale to tale. There are no. Anyways, but it's but the present story is told in a linear fashion, whereas the past of stories of these various characters isn't. So you kind of have to put the pieces together as you go, and it's kind of fun because the past informs present circumstances. But that's not the experience that you're all going to have today and over the next several episodes, because I've put everything in a linear fashion.
Finished the puzzle.
Exactly. Yes. And I'm really not a puzzle guy. I don't really care for puzzles, but this was fun.
Oh, I love
I
puzzles.
love a good
This
puzzle.
is one you enjoyed putting together for
Mhm.
us.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, before we get to the bulk of this story, or the meat, the present day stuff, we do need to fill you in on what happened to Gerard after Karn saved him from Ferexian Raiders when he was just a baby, and how he became a member of Weatherlight's crew. So remember at the end of our Bloodline series that Karn took baby Gerard and most of the legacy artifacts away from Benalia to keep them safe from the Ferexians that had been attacking Benalia at the time. And it turns out that Urza had ordered Karn to travel from Benalia to one of his allies on a continent called Gemura.
Never heard of that place before.
Well, it's on Dominaria, and it's a super continent, is what they call it. So it's a biggins.
It's important.
It's really great.
Mhm. Yeah.
I guess Dominaria itself is very large if they can have a supercontinent and other continents.
Yeah, you're probably right. I wonder if it was like the how there's a theory. I don't know if it's been proven, but that the continents on Earth used to be either attached or much closer together, and
Was it
and
Pangea?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a supercontinent. Yeah, it's just like Pangea.
Yeah.
So, so Gemura was located, or I guess is located, because Dominaria is still around in present magic lore. It was located southwest of Shiv, which is where Joyra is from. We talked about that a little bit in Bloodlines, but that's mostly a place that we spent a lot of time in our Time Streams series, if that kind of gives you any perspective on where Gemura is located. But it has a relatively temperate climate with some desert areas, so it sounds nice. And if you like desert, it sounds really nice.
So it's like Vegas, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they have any
Does it have the
casinos?
strip? Yeah.
I don't know if they have any electricity, if I'm being perfectly honest.
They just have like non-electronic slot machines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you can
Like in
still
the
have like
Flintstones.
gambling and
Yeah.
like casino style thing without any electronics.
That's true. Yeah, I
You
guess
can
I was
have
thinking of
cards
slots.
and chips
Yeah.
and stuff.
Mhm.
It's true. You can have a little crap table and be like, oh yeah.
Pachinko machines.
Oh, you could use your magic dice. There'd be so many combinations.
Oh, the D20s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you could make a game around that.
That's craps, right? Roulette is the one with the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Craps is the long table
Oh,
where
you
you
could
throw
do
the dice.
roulette with like all the different magic colors instead of just black and red.
Yeah.
I think
And
we're
the
onto
one- and-
something, guys.
And the one
Yeah, I
green
wish that was
spot.
part of this book.
Yeah,
That would have been great.
That's right.
It's like when they go to Canto Bite in The Last Jedi. It's my favorite part. So, anyways, the ally that Urza sent Karn to find was the head of a Jamuran war clan, or sort of the head of a war clan that was the head of all the Jamuran war clans. So this guy's like the king of kings, and his name was Cedar Kondo.
King of Kings on the supercontinent.
That's right. That's
That
right.
name's familiar.
Man, that's a dope
Mhm.
horse.
Yes, I believe he got a card in Commander 2016. He got his one and only printing. I don't know if he's depicted anywhere else, but
Oh yeah, he's a
Possible.
partner commander with the flanking.
that's right. Yes.
Speaking of flanking, Riley mentioned his majestic horse, and I have to second that his horse is very majestic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good. I wonder
I'm
how he keeps
impressed
it so
by that
clean.
horse.
Mm-hmm.
He
You,
is a
sir,
clean
have an
horse.
impressive
Yeah.
horse.
So Urza had apparently shared some of his master plan with Kondo because the war clan leader knew why Gerard and the legacy were so important, which is why he took the little boy and the silver golem in. Kondo eventually adopted Gerard and began raising him alongside his own biological son, Vul. Karn don't have a picture of him. Karn also remained for the duration of Gerard's childhood to protect the boy in all aspects.
So Card
life.
was like his nanny?
Yeah,
Nanny Card.
yeah. He is like the nanny. That's a good.
I love Card.
Yeah.
He's definitely my favorite character so far in this long running series that we've done.
He wears so many hats.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah,
he does.
he sort of represents us. When we first meet him in time streams, he's essentially like a kid, and he, throughout this whole story, and we'll get to that, but he's, a lot of characters have the hero's journey sort of archetype, but he sort of has the most long lasting one, because he's still a character in Magic lore to this day. But yeah, love Karn. One of my favorites.
In the next unset, we should get a Karn card that has like Karn's hats or something, and it's him like dressed up in all the roles that he's had to play in the stories.
Or just Nanny Karn.
Yeah.
Or just Nanny Karn.
Nanny Karn, and he's like Mary Poppins. He's got a little
Coming down with that
little
umbrella.
Yeah.
Just like in a little pink apron.
So during this time period, Gerard and Karn also became valued members of the tribe, while Gerard and Vul grew quite close. So close, in fact, that in their time together, Gerard shared much of what Karn had told him about the legacy and his own importance in using it to defend Dominaria against Phyrexia.
Well, you gotta tell your BFF.
Yeah, you do. You do. So life for Gerard during this time period seemed to be quite peaceful and even happy. And knowing what I know now, and I know that Riley and Eric, a little bit about Gerard's story arc in the grand scheme of things, but I kind of think this is like the happiest, maybe not necessarily the happiest, but like the most innocent time in Gerard's life, and he never really gets to experience this again because like greatness is thrust upon him because Urza said so. But anyways, Phyrexia found a way to follow him to the always found a way to follow him. And in an attempt to eradicate all of Urza's plans against them, they sent a human native of Rath, Stark Ilvek, to infiltrate Kondo's tribe. So,
He looks like a rat fink.
he does a little bit, yeah.
So, but they say human native. I guess he's like working for the Phyrexians, but he's not a
Sleeper agent. No, he is a
sleeper
he's
agent.
a human, and yes, he just works for. It's kind of like how a vampire will have a familiar, but they're not a vampire.
Yeah.
So we didn't get into the people
yeah.
native to Rath in our last series when we introduced the plane because they just weren't that important to that particular story. But we're going to do a quick explanation before we go any further with Gerard's story. So we all remember why Yawgmoth created Rath, and if you don't, the desired outcome of Rath's growth was to eventually become the same size and mass as Dominaria so that the artificial plane could be transposed over top of Dominaria, and its armies would essentially be just transported right there immediately. And like all carefully crafted plans, the devil's in the details. And Flowstone has a mind of its own. Of course, that's something else we mentioned in our last series. And basically an unintended circumstance of Rath's growth was that it began to overlay partially onto Dominaria before Phyrexian troops were ever deployed. And as it grew, and those overlaps happened briefly, Dominarian inhabitants were transported to the hostile environment of Rath. They're just suddenly, I'm on Dominaria. Oh, now I'm on Rath.
That's
That one little picture looks like Pride Rock.
It does.
Yeah,
it kind of looks like Timon and
a
Pumbaa's
sad
home.
Pride Rock. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever watch like Lion King 1.5?
I did watch it, but I was very young. I don't really
No?
remember anything about it. But it's like Scar's son, right?
Lion King
But isn't
1.5?
it Yeah, that one's from the perspective of Timon and Pumbaa, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Okay, I
Timon
did
and
not-
Pumbaa's
I've never heard of
perspective.
it then.
But they've got like this
Okay.
little Pride Rock, right? Like it's just a little pile of rocks that looks kind of like Pride Rock, but it's like way out of the picture. I don't know.
Okay.
It just reminds me of that. It's just this little dinky Pride Rock.
That is what it is. Yeah.
So these former Dominarian inhabitants became the progenitors of the Rathi natives, and of those natives, 3 tribes arose: the Kor, the Vek, and the Dal. And like Stark being, he's obviously of the Vek tribe, for example. Each tribe primarily lived as nomads, with some of the Dal and Vek founding and attempting to protect small villages. The Dal and Vek were human, with the Dal appearing to be fair-featured Caucasians, and the Vek having the appearance of Middle Eastern Caucasian people. while the core were catfolk with mostly a blue hue to their fur. And these three tribes were again split into two groups, the N and the Ill. So Stark is an Ilvek. So the N were any member of the three tribes that resisted and lived separately from the Evenkar's control, the Evenkar being the ruler of Rath, and the Ill were members of any of the tribes that sold their services to the Evenkar, or if they lived as slaves, or simply gave the Evenkar their allegiance, either willingly or maybe the Evenkar like blackmailed them or threatened their family. It's anything like that. And with all that being said, the Ill weren't necessarily bad people. Sometimes they were just caught in a bad situation, like when you owe the mob money or something. You're not a bad person. You made some bad decisions.
You owe some bad people some stuff.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
You're gonna wake up with a horse head in your bed, and you'll be swimming with the fishes.
Well, the horsehead guy, that was because he wouldn't give them a movie role, not because he owed them money, but still, it was bad.
Still unpleasant.
Yeah. So if the Evenkar wanted somebody to give somebody he knew a movie role, they might end up in Ill. Mm-hmm.
Man.
So there are three other Dominarian groups that were transported to Rath due to the early overlapping of the two planes. Those groups were the Thalicos, the Dothi, and the Soltari.
Hey, Soltari.
Hey, Dothi. Hey, Salico.
Did you guys see the Dothi? What is that?
It's just one of the creatures. I think it's like Dothy's. It's Dothy something. I can't remember that particular one.
Oh,
but the
man.
Dothi do look kind of.
He looks kind of like a devil tiki man wearing a little chain skirt.
Yeah, he's wearing a little suit of armor or something.
It's just his smile.
Just look. That mouth.
Yeah, that smile gets me.
He looks like a tree person.
Yes.
It's a smile only a mother could love.
Exactly.
So during that time period that the three groups were plane shifted to Rath, the Soltari and the Dothi were at war with one another, while the Thalicos had remained neutral in that conflict. But unfortunately, none of them ever made it all the way to Rath. When they were transported, when the overlay happened, they were trapped in the shadows between the two planes instead of being transported to Rath like the other tribes we just talked about. The shadows were the extraplanar space between Dominaria and Rath, and you're probably wondering, like I was, how they survived. We know from our Eldrazi Explained episode that the Blind Eternities are what exists between planes, and we all know that the barest touch of the Blind Eternities will kill anything without the Planeswalker Spark, even ghosts.
Oh yeah, you can kill a ghost.
You can, yeah.
Even ghosts can't survive there.
No. And if
That's right,
No,
Eric.
no.
Good throwback.
and if you want to find out more about that, that's episode 63. If you want to go back and listen to that, but
We laugh about ghosts. That's for darn sure.
that was good. I had to put that in. It was so ridiculous. So how did they survive the shadows? So a couple of reasons. The first being that the shadows and the Blind Eternities are not the same thing. If you remember back in our Bloodline series when we first introduced Rath and its location, we said that because of how close it was to Dominaria, it was difficult to notice or find by most planeswalkers, which was part of Yawgmoth's plan in keeping it secret until it got big enough.
Just hide it in plain sight.
Plain.
Oh.
Oh.
Wow.
A side effect of the two planes being so close together is that it created a livable space between them instead of the usual Blind Eternities that exist between planes, and that can also kill ghosts. So the second reason that the three groups were able to survive the shadows was that when they were transported there, they lost their corporeal form, and so they no longer needed sustenance to live, which is good because there was none to be had there. And in addition to losing their bodies, they were also unable to communicate with the inhabitants of either plane, although they were still able to see into both planes. Knowing this about these three creature types kind of makes the shadow keyword a lot more flavorful.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
And if you're not familiar with the shadow keyword, it's basically a creature with shadow can't be blocked by a creature without it, and a creature nor can a creature with shadow block a creature without it. When I first started playing Magic, I thought shadow was like the coolest thing because all my creatures were unblockable, but then I couldn't block anything, and I sort of had to abandon that. Just overestimation of the mechanic, but I still think it's cool.
Yeah, it feels very much like flying, but of course, yeah, the can't be able to block anything else it makes it a little bit awkward.
Yeah, it's like it makes it strictly worse than flying.
Yeah.
But it still can't be blocked by flying.
Correct.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like horsemanship.
Yeah, that's right.
Except
There you go.
I think horsemanship is actually stronger because horsemanship you can still block other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're both stronger than shadow.
They should definitely bring horsemanship back.
No.
They should give us another portal theme set. You know what? If we go back to Kamigawa, they can bring horsemanship back because that's like a Japanese themed set, and that's where horsemanship came from, right? One of the portal sets, or was it both portal sets?
I think it was. Yeah.
I really want to go back to Kamigawa.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, make Kamigawa great
Just
again.
bring back banding.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, give me a banding tribal commander.
Okay, so anyways, being essentially trapped between these two planes, the Thalicos and the Dothi went insane, probably because they had nothing to do, and they just got to look into planes but couldn't interact with them. It's kind of like Ghost, but without Whoopi Goldberg.
Well, at least they're not dead.
Well, I mean, if that's all you can say about it, that doesn't sound great. Whereas the Soltari, using their religion, which offered them peace and solidarity of mind, I guess they meditated or prayed or something, and because of that, they were able to maintain a stable mental condition. And it's probably why they don't look that nuts in the pictures, like as nuts as the other two. They look kind of like ghosty, where the Soltari just looks strictly like sinewy. But anyways,
Yeah.
I don't know if that has anything to do with their appearance, but lastly, before we get back to the story, we are going to get back to the plot here in just a moment. There are two more races from Dominaria that were transported to Rath, well ahead of the planned Rathi overlay. They were the Rootwater Merfolk and the Sky Shroud Elves. So the two groups were originally at peace while they lived on Dominaria. When they were transported to Rath, though, they quickly began to run out of resources. That struggle to survive is what eventually led the Elves and Merfolk to face each other in an armed conflict. That sounds like a movie right there, but...
Yeah.
Because the Merfolk inhabited a large ocean that had been transported along with them to Rath, the Elves used their magic to create Sky Shroud, a massive forest that grew up from the water that covered most of the ocean's surface, growing so dense that little sunlight made it through the canopy to the water below. And so what was once an ocean for the Merfolk became a deep swamp under Sky Shroud. The body of water eventually came to be known as the Riptide Sea.
Hey.
The Elves made the forest their new home, while the Merfolk, deprived of sunlight, became savage, carnivorous, and animalistic beasts. It wasn't just the sunlight and lack of food or space that did it to the Merfolk. The Evencar was also secretly experimenting on them, but I don't know anything else about that. I don't know what effect it had, other than that they look very different from the Merfolk that we're used to.
They've just been brewing down there in that water.
It sounds awful.
Yeah, it does. It does sound pretty rough. Yeah, I mean, just being like transported to a crappier plane.
Yeah,
like,
do they have to put the Merfolk in like little plastic bags full of water? You know, like when you're taking a fish home from the pet store.
You gotta like put it in the water,
Yeah.
so it
gets used to
it acclimatizes.
It acclimatizes.
Ugh, my brothers had fish. It always stunk.
Well, they should clean their tanks.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree. I don't think they did. And actually, one time, one of my brothers, I think he was playing Roger Clemens baseball on the Super NES, and not a very entertaining game to play or watch, I thought. But he was upset at something that happened in the game, and he threw his controller at his desk where the fish tank was, and it hit the fish tank, and the fish tank cracked. It didn't totally break, but it cracked, and stinky water started to spill out everywhere, so we had to like quickly, just skitter around and clean it up, and it was the whole thing. I'm just like shaking my head.
Was that Jeff?
Oh boy.
It was.
How did I know?
So this whole thing was a bit of a sidetrack, but we needed to explain the natives of Rath because they will have a part to play in this ever-expanding story, not just for Rath and Storm, but as we move forward. And we also wanted Stark's name and a few other prominent Rathy characters' names to make sense. So let's get back to Dominaria here.
Let's get back to the tale as old as time.
It is. It's. I mean, 1998 basically is as old as time.
Yeah, Baby and the Beast.
Yeah.
Hey.
Carney Bobbins.
And like give Baby Gerard the full beard too. Like I want the I imagine him as a baby with the beard. So like we said, Stark was sent to Dominaria by his Ferexian masters to infiltrate Kondo's tribe, but not to kill Gerard or to steal the legacy artifacts. He was actually sent to guide Kondo's son, Vul, to power. So the higher-ups in Phyrexia noticed darkness growing in this young man and thought that with the right manipulations, he had the potential to become the next Evancar of Wrath. And in case anybody's wondering, at the end of our Bloodline series, that character that I can't remember the name of, but he was the completed Phyrexian that killed Davil, and he took on the mantle of Evancar of Wrath. I don't know if he's still the Evancar. They don't get into that. So, and I looked. If you've looked into this like I have, you know how sparse a lot of this information can be. So,
this also sounds like Star Wars. There's a darkness brooding, and they're like, with the right.
It is like the dark side. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of like good and evil permeates everything.
Yeah, look at that.
Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle.
Okay, that's the show.
We all learned a lesson. Done.
So Stark wasn't all bad. He was one of the Rathy that willingly worked for the Evancar, but it was in an attempt to protect his daughter. Stark's wife had been killed by those loyal to the Evancar for basically being an enemy of the Evancar. She was an Undal woman, so she's of the Dal tribe, and she's not working for the bad guys. And to protect his daughter, he sent her to live with relatives and began to work for the Evancar as sort of an attrition for his wife's crimes, and then maybe they wouldn't look too deeply into his personal life. The marriage between him and his wife was also a secret marriage, so I don't think anybody knew about it, or that this woman's daughter was also his daughter. So anyways, he's not all bad, but he's also kind of a piece of shit. So we can have a little bit of sympathy for him, but not really. He's kind of a tragic character. But I do have sympathy for him. But
We turned him into a monster and then we called him one.
Kind of, yeah. That's a good way to put it. That's apt. Anyways, when Stark arrived in Jamura, he spent his first few weeks living with a goat herder, learning the local language,
I think that's funny.
and learning about Kondo's tribe and his sons. This is funny. He's like living with a goat herder. Like he probably smells like goat
You
poop.
heard?
It's probably that'd be such a good line. It's too bad we don't know more like farmers that herd, because I don't think that would ever get old.
They're out there.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're just right down the block, but I don't talk to my neighbors, so it's just the way it is.
Maybe he's hanging out with a bunch of those like 0-1 goat tokens.
Exactly, yeah. Trading post. So when the goat herder began to tell Stark about Vul, Stark remembered what his Phyrexian masters told him before transporting him to Dominaria.
This one has potential.
The voice hissed.
A great gift for destruction. He is an excellent candidate.
Yeah, which makes me think they probably had other candidates too, and other Starks on other planes, but
Did they do reference
knows?
checks?
I don't think
Just
so.
line them up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So by the time Stark had successfully infiltrated Kondo's clan and gained his trust, the time of Vul's Rite of Passage was approaching.
Is that like puberty? Is bat mitzvah?
Yeah, his dad just like takes him to a prostitute, and like that's what he has to do. So he's not a virgin anymore.
Yeah.
So this was something that all male members of the tribe had to undergo when they reached age 17. I think that's usually when puberty ends, I think. Actually, for some people, that's when puberty starts. Does anybody
whole
know
mixed
like
bag.
when puberty ends? I know that this is a sidetrack, but I've even read that like some kids you can start puberty as early as like 7, but I guess it's hard to put your finger on exactly when it starts because
Sure.
you know like when it would start like on the cellular level first, and you know. Anyways, let's not get into this because this is kind of bordering on a weird conversation. We'll do this in private. So the Rite of Passage, or this thing that all male members of the tribe had to do, was basically a test of strength and endurance, and it was supposed to transition one into manhood. And for Vul, it meant much more because he was the son of the clan leader, which meant that if he passed the test, he would one day take over as leader of the tribe from his father. We should also mention that due to the danger involved in this test, the initiate often died if they were unsuccessful. Not because that was the penalty of failure, but again because the activities involved were just that dangerous.
Sure.
Stark thought that if he could engineer a situation where Vul failed to pass the test but would survive his failure, the young man would be steered down the path that Stark's masters had in mind for him. So Stark thought that some kind of drug would work, something that would disorient Vul but not cause him permanent damage or cause him to die during the test. Getting a drug into the young man's system posed a problem as candidates of the ritual underwent purification and fasting the week prior to it. I can't imagine fasting for a week. Just water.
A whole week.
I guess you can have like lemon juice, black coffee. What else can you have?
No calorie gum.
Yeah, you can have no calorie. I don't think they had that, but that would have been good. Yeah.
Do you think these guys had
Anyways,
access
I guess
to
that's
that?
not really the I guess that's not really the point. You know, the point
He's
is,
like, I'll just have some dirt water, mix it up a little bit. Chunky.
I don't even think you should do it. Like, you need to like replenish your vitamins. I don't think multivitamins have calories. You could definitely get some vitamins that way. But I don't think they had those. So another part of the ritual was that candidates had their bodies painted, and that, Stark decided, was how he would get the drug into Vul's body. In the 2 days leading up to the ritual, Stark was able to covertly steal the herbs he needed to make the drug from the tribe's healer, and he was also able to distract the tribe's paint mixer long enough to get the drug into the paint that they were planning to use on Vul.
So how do you think that tribe determines jobs? Like, you get to be the healer, and you get to be the paint mixer.
Well, I imagine it's sort of like, you know, more like tribalistic societies, or like going back in human history, where you kind of just did what your parents did.
Sure.
Which isn't like, you know, that even happens
That happens now.
now.
Of course it does.
Yeah, it was probably like how Vul's going to be the clan leader. You know, the paint mixer probably has a son or daughter that he's teaching to mix paint. You know,
I just love how it's the tribe's paint mixer.
that's
Yeah.
what the book said. But
It's hilarious.
but I don't know if Stark is just really good at his job, or if these people are just way too trusting. But it seems like it was pretty easy for this.
Wouldn't you trust that face?
Greasy little guy.
He's a rat thing.
I would trust that widow's peak any day. I love a good widow's peak.
Sure.
A real one. Don't show me your like receding hairline and say you have a widow's peak. Okay, guys, that's not a widow's peak. I don't have a widow's peak. Okay? So 2 days later, it was time for Vul's test. The tribe gathered to watch the young man get painted up, and by the tribe's paint mixer. Or the paint mixer did it,
the
but
body painter.
the body painter.
No,
The
it's,
tribe's
yeah,
body
yeah.
painter.
the tribe's body painter.
So, like the rest of them, Stark watched, and while he did, he noticed that Vul and his pale-skinned stepbrother had matching scars across the back of one of their hands, each one of their hands, and the scars were a result of a blood brother situation.
Ooh, so it was a little situation.
Yeah, they're very close. They're very close.
That's sweet.
Yeah, and they're very close in age. Vul is just 1 year older than Gerard. So anyway, part of Vul's test was to climb a cliff face that was several hundred feet high and very steep. And so once the young man was covered in the tainted paint by the body painter, and a pair of steel hooks tightly bound to his wrist, he began his climb.
Vul came to the tumbled rocks at the crag's foot, and without hesitation drove a climbing hook into the rock face. He pulled himself up and clawed with the other. The pale scar on his dark hand gleamed in the afternoon sun, and Stark saw Gerard glance at the matching mark on his own hand before turning his eyes upward.
He's doing it. So he climbed for a while, obviously, and the drug began to take effect when Vool had climbed to a considerable height, several, a few hundred feet. He's not at the top yet. And as he drove his climbing hooks into the cliff face, he suddenly stopped, holding one of his hands in midair, just shy of driving the hook attached to it into the cliff face. Worried glances began to pass between the onlookers below, save for Stark, of course, who was smiling to himself, which is kind of suspicious.
Just a little bit.
It's just like,
does anybody see him?
Yeah. He's like, oh, my tank
Seems like it's working.
working.
I wonder what happened to the paint mixer after this, too. They don't get into that, but the hand that Vool was holding in midair began to fall to his side, and at the same moment that his head dropped so that his chin was touching his chest, he lifted his head weakly and began to lift his arm in an attempt to drive the hook into the cliff face, and he missed. His footing gave along with the rest of his body, and he fell. Some of the onlookers cried out. Some turned their eyes away, and terror began to rise in Stark. Vool's death was certain with a fall from that height, and Stark needed him alive if he hoped to complete his mission. Or he was going to get
too much. Yeah.
But as Vool fell, one of his hooked wrists caught an outcropping on the cliff face. He wasn't safe, however, as he was still about 200 feet above where the onlookers were standing. And at this point, the drug had taken full effect on him, and he was unable to climb up or down. So he's just...
Caught in purgatory.
Yeah. So, also imagine how Vool's father is feeling. He was in the crowd watching all this unfold, and he couldn't intervene because if he did, Vool would fail the test. And if he didn't, Vool would die and fail the test. So it's kind of rock and a hard place. No pun intended. So unlike Kondo and almost everyone else in attendance, Gerard was not bound by a lifetime living under the tribe's rules, and so he did something that he may eventually come to regard as a mistake. He intervened. So obviously Gerard had lived with the tribe for most of his life, but he knew that it wasn't where he would live his entire life. He's kind of just he knows that at least there are some people like Karn who've told him that he's destined for great things.
So he's here for a good time, not for a long time.
So have a good time.
Have a good time while you're there.
Sun don't shine every day.
That's right. So as everyone watched Vool dangle off the side of the cliff face, Gerard suddenly appeared on the ledge just above him. So he skittered up there quick. Gerard stretched out a hand to his brother, but Vool pulled his free hand away and shouted something at Gerard that the crowd couldn't hear. The force with which Vool pulled his free hand away caused his whole body to sway away from the cliff face, and the hook that was still holding onto the outcropping slipped away. Gerard had just enough time to outstretch his arm and grab Vool's wrist before he fell, so he saved him. Below, the crowd cried out again, but this time in sorrow rather than fear, because Gerard's interference meant that Vool would never become the leader of the tribe.
Whoa, never.
Never. No, he can't. It's not like a driving test. You can't retake it.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what Vool told Gerard once they had both gotten to solid ground.
You've stolen my legacy. It was my right to win my destiny or die in the attempt.
Gerard, stung, shouted back.
What did you want me to do? Just let you die? Yes, damn you. It's my life, my choice how it shall end. Far better to die than to be disgraced like this.
Now I'm thinking of, It's My Life, Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's now or never.
Vool pushed away his half-brother. He drew his knife and cut the hooks from his arms with furious strokes. Then he slashed viciously at the back of his own scarred hand. He spat at Gerard's feet and stalked away. No one said a word.
Ooh,
Oh boy.
cut off their blood brother.
Yeah, just
scar?
like hacked at the top of his hand.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really sad.
Well,
Damn.
his life is over. He's choked.
Yeah.
He'd rather
Yeah,
be
like
dead.
he was supposed to be the leader, and now he just can't.
Well, maybe
that's
he can become the tribe's painter because they probably fired the last one.
That's right.
They should. That's what I'd be.
Oh my
That's what
god.
I'd be talking to.
That's right. That's how you get a job like that. It's like, oh, I failed the test. I guess I'm the tribe paint mixer now.
I guess he had too much pride to be the paint mixer.
Yeah.
So instead of returning to the village with the rest of the tribe, Stark chose a different route, tracing Vool's angry path away from Cliff and clan. When he reached the cliff where Vool had been rescued, the young Jameron was no longer there. But he was able to follow Vool's tracks. Stark followed them into the foothills that led away from the mountains where the tribe had gathered. It was dusk when Stark started following Vool's path, and nearly full dark when he found the young man, crouched in a hollow near a trickling stream. When Vool heard Stark approaching, he leapt to his feet, pulled out his knife, and demanded to know the meaning of the intrusion. Stark told the young man that he was a friend and that he was there to help him, to which Vool replied that he needed no help and demanded Stark leave him. Instead, Stark began to work on him. And the following conversation between the two pretty much consisted of Vool telling Stark that because he failed the test, he had lost his legacy and destiny of leading the war clan. Stark, on the other hand, told the young man that he could start him on the path to a new destiny, one far greater than a leader of a war clan. Sounds pretty good.
If he failed the test, though, that means it wasn't his destiny.
Well, I guess it was his destiny to die. You know, it's sort of like when Forrest Gump saves Lieutenant Dan, and Lieutenant Dan is like, I was supposed to die, like all my ancestors.
I guess, yeah, okay. I guess, yeah, if you're looking at destiny as something that isn't predetermined.
No, I don't think it has to be.
Cool.
But I think Vool also feels that he's destined for greatness, you know, in one way or another.
Sure.
Well, he can still be a great paint mixer.
Painter, yeah.
It's a paint
It's
again.
a dying art.
I think it's kind of a thankless job.
And clearly, it's easy to be
I
tricked.
just imagine Vool
Well, yeah.
behind the counter in like a Rona, just mixing paint.
It's like, this doesn't match the swatch I picked. Just take it.
I'm not mixing it again.
Oh boy.
I'm
Yeah,
not mixing it
I
again.
can see him being pretty bitter about it. Anywho.
So Stark told Vool about Rath and the masters that had sent him to Dominaria, and that if Vool served them, he would not only be able to rule Rath, but he would be able to take back what was rightfully his from his father and Gerard. So while Vool was thinking about which path to take, Stark presented him with a fist-sized amulet he had in his possession.
This is the Touchstone. It is the first piece in claiming your true legacy.
Its jeweled silver face reflected the moonlight into Vool's.
You may have death and disgrace, or revenge and power. How will you choose?
Kalima. So the Touchstone is a piece of the legacy, and based on my research, it's unclear how it came into Stark's possession. We do know that Karn brought many of the legacy artifacts with him when he and Gerard escaped Benalia years earlier, and if the Touchstone was among them and Karn kept them somewhere in Kondo's camp, Stark could have snatched it up that way. Not exactly sure. So, anyways, Vool chose revenge and power. Which is good because there wouldn't be much of a story if he didn't. And over the following 2 years, Vool waged a bloody war on all who had dishonored him, and behind him crept Stark, who was now his mentor, and instructed him on how best to use the powers with which he had allied himself with. First fell the legacy. So this book actually contradicts itself regarding this part of the story. In one part it says that one night while the clan was sleeping, Vool gathered the legacy artifacts and carried them away. Another depiction of the theft was that Vool cut the artifacts out of Karn's torso. But whichever it was, Karn went after Vool to retrieve the artifacts. But it's important to point out that Karn didn't immediately go after them. So it was actually Gerard that convinced the Golem to rescue the pieces of the legacy. One night, while they still lived in Kondo's camp, Gerard, and this is like during that 2-year period, Gerard guilted Karn into going after Vool and retrieving the legacy artifacts. Gerard wondered if the artifacts were truly a part of Karn, why he wasn't more concerned with retrieving them. They had heard Vool had been selling some of the artifacts to fund his growing army, and Gerard asked Karn,
Doesn't that make you mad?
It did. Anger set Karn's jaw on edge and made his joints stiff. Still, what use would such feelings serve?
Gerard, you are 16 years old, on the verge of manhood, so this complaining ill beseems you. The warriors have gone to get your legacy back. In fact, a boy in the clan said that Vul said you'd be too scared to do anything about it. Vul said you wouldn't even care, and even if you did care, you wouldn't do anything about it because you wouldn't want to scratch your polish, that you were no more dangerous than a silver spoon that I was born with. And I'm starting to think maybe he was right. I mean, wasn't he right after all?
Gerard sighed.
That's good. I'm sure that's how he sighs. I should have known you wouldn't go. Serves me right for thinking you were more than a guardian, for thinking you were actually my friend.
Oof,
and
ouch.
not just my nanny.
Not just my silver spoon.
Silver spoon nanny.
Ouch.
So, again, Gerard is 16 at this point, so some of what he's saying to Karn comes from the ignorance of youth, if you will, because obviously Karn would do anything for Gerard. And Gerard's just kind of being a little baby. We've all been there. All that being said, Gerard's words, coupled with how Karn already felt about Vul and the theft of the artifacts, made him leave the camp that night to search for them. So Karn found Vul and his growing army in the nearby town of Albuto. So a man-made structure that floated in the middle of a lake. During the day, the town anchored near the shore, and during the night, it anchored in the middle of the lake.
Yeah, that's some pretty dang good protection there. You just have you're like, oh, we're connected, and then we have our own giant moat.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, honestly. So the chains connecting the anchors to the city was what Karn used to reach the town. From the shore of the lake, Karn walked into the water on the floor of the lake until he reached one of the anchors holding the town in place. And it sort of reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons where Bart skips school and Skinner chases him, and Bart takes that bridge across it's like a river or something, and he cuts the bridge, it's like a rope bridge, and then Skinner just walks into the water and walks back out. I think that's from a movie or something, but it's a real Terminator move.
Most funny things in The Simpsons are from a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still getting references.
Yeah,
even after all these years.
rewatching it. Yeah.
Karn then climbed up one of the chains holding the anchor until he could lift himself onto the surface of the floating town. He then began to make his way through the town in search of Vul, and he immediately noticed that many of the town's inhabitants were celebrating something, and the revelry made it easier for Karn to pass by unnoticed. Perfect. Must be a really good party, because I don't know if I mean, unless he's wearing his Mary Poppins
giant
outfit.
Silver golem walking by.
I don't. He's
trying to sneak
like
around.
9 feet tall. Yeah.
He's wearing a party hat, just walking around.
Yeah.
One of his many hats.
I'm gonna be party Karn tonight. Oh man, that was good.
So he followed the sound of raucous laughter until he came across a group of men that were congregating over a map. In the center of the group stood a lean, young figure, bare to the waist. He was poised on an upturned barrel with a cane of bamboo in one hand that he was using to gesture imperiously at the map. Despite the distance between them, Karn immediately knew it was Vul. You could probably tell by his torso. Now see him getting all painted up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Remembers that.
Never forget.
Wink. Wink.
Hashtag never forget.
So he also knew the map the men were congregating around was of Cedar Kondo's village. They were planning on going after Vul's former tribe next, and that's when they noticed Karn. Probably because he gets mad and then he just takes off his party hat, and they're like, "Oh my God, Karn, you're there!"
Oh my God, it's a big golem.
I didn't recognize you with your hat on. So as soon as Vul and his men noticed the silver golem in their midst, their laughter and planning stopped. The men dropped their drinks and pulled out their swords and spears. Karn began to walk toward Vul, and most of the men in between Karn and Vul moved aside for the golem. And those that were brave or stupid enough to take a swing at him found their swords and spears jangling to the floor and a nerveless ball of torn flesh and broken bone at the end of their wrists, their hands having been crushed in the silver man's grip.
Hell yeah. Karn just
he's not fucking around.
That's
Not
coming
wearing
in.
his nanny hat
That's
now.
a real Terminator move. Yeah. God, he's cool.
Yeah.
So
that's a cool scene.
oh yeah. So when he reached Vul, the young man sarcastically asked Karn if he had come to join them. As usual, Karn's reply was simple and straightforward.
I am not here to join you. I am here to warn you. Anyone intent on harming Gerard will have to deal with me first.
Vul was less than intimidated, and he let the Silver Man know it.
A terrible threat indeed. These warriors have battled goblin armies and giant serpents, but encounter with you? Well, that's sermonizing it in angst. Every last fighter would be bored to death.
He's good. So Karn's fury for the young man reached its zenith, and his gigantic hands moved with sudden, fierce speed. Karn grabbed Vul by the torso and hoisted him off the ground. The circle of men surrounding them widened as true dread began to sprout in Vul's eyes. Karn began to squeeze the young man's body as he explained the importance of Gerard and his legacy.
Your stepbrother is destined for greatness. He is the heir to the legacy. He is the one child born to defend this world. He was forged of flesh as I was forged of silver, and each of us bear the hope of generations.
Mastering his terror, the young rebel spat on the silver golem's face.
Kapooey.
What?
There we go.
What good is my brother's legacy?
He cried.
Greatness cannot be handed to a man. He will denigrate and despise it, nor can greatness be stolen from a man who truly possesses it. I am the one destined for greatness, not that little piglet. Yeah, that's an ouch.
That's a tough one. I'm going to use that.
Little piglet. I have taken Gerard's precious legacy, what was never truly his, and with it I have raised this army. And now I will take what belongs to my father, and soon what belongs to all the world.
They should have offered him the painting job. Look what the situation is now. Look at it. This is bad.
Yes, that would have satiated him.
Bob Ross your way out of this one.
No kidding.
Just get a little bit of
No
a
happy little trees.
titanium white.
Get a little bit of that phthalo green. So Karn reiterated that all he wanted from Vul were the pieces of the legacy that he'd stolen, but this was all part of Vul's plan. Because he's, say what you will about Vul, he's a smart guy. So as Karn threatened to squeeze the young man to death, Vul explained to Karn that he knew Karn would come for the artifacts and that he, Vul, wanted him to, so that he would be able to collect another piece of Gerard's legacy, which was Karn himself. Karn began to worry, but he still had Vul in his grasp and threatened to kill him if he didn't get the stolen artifacts. Go get him. So Vul told the Silver Man that he wasn't afraid to die, and so Karn began to squeeze. Vul's men began to attack Karn, pummeling him with sword and spear and fist, but none of their efforts had any effect on the golem. But then, just before Vul would have fallen unconscious, Karn released the pressure he was applying to the young man's broken body and let Vul slacken in his grasp. Seeing this, Vul's men halted their attack and backed away from the Silver Man. Karn again demanded to know where the artifacts were, and Vul, head dropping in surrender, gasped,
Bring out the man.
Nice. Most of Vul's men parted as several of them moved purposefully toward a locked, bolted, and guarded doorway. The men moving towards the door unlocked and opened it, and a manacled man on a wagon, being pulled by 4 of Vul's men, emerged from a room. The man was huge, almost as big as Karn himself, and Vul explained what he had done with the legacy artifacts. Vul had found the biggest villager, cut him open, removed some of his internal organs, and replaced them with the legacy artifacts.
Ooh, what the hell?
Fucked up game of operation.
No kidding.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is like for young adults. It's like I don't know. I think this needs to be like.
I think this is like, it's like the version of, this is like PG-13 violence, like the way like in, young adult books, they have like kissing and stuff, and like that's considered romance.
Well,
or like they have implied sex.
Well, what's coming up is not PG.
So is this guy still
it's
alive?
like an R rating. He's still alive. Yeah, he's still alive. They're carting him around on a wagon.
Wow.
So
That's messed up.
So Karn told this large villager to come with him. Karn said, I'll take you with me. Let's get out of here. We're going to figure this out, buddy. Vul told him that Vul's archmage was responsible for keeping the large villager alive in the absence of the organs that they had removed from him, and if Karn left with him, he would die. My response would have been like, hey, archmage, let's go. Like,
I was going to say, so come along.
Like, I will crush your face if you don't come with me. So anyways, so the only way that Karn could get the legacy back was to kill this man, and Vul knew that if he wouldn't kill him, how would he be able to kill an innocent villager? And so Karn fell to his knees with the realization of what he had walked into, and he also dropped Vul to the floor. And Karn and the villagers' gazes met, and the villager said,
I am dead one way or another. I cannot blame you if you reach within me and draw forth what is yours. Vul has killed me, not you.
Vul's men began to laugh and guffaw at both Karn and the villager, and over the noise of the crowd, Vul shouted,
Behold the helpless guardian. Behold the silver golem with a heart of glass and a gut of paper. Fear him. Tremble before him.
I bet the guys that need to get their hands amputated actually are trembling. I bet they're upset.
They probably went home.
They're probably.
That's when you leave the party.
Or they fell unconscious from shock. Who knows? So the laughing continued, and the villagers spoke again.
One way or another, you must act, Karn. Listen to your fear and flee, or listen to your fury and take what is yours. Return to Gerard and guard him from Vul, or strike me down and, with the treasures once again in your grasp, strike down Vul once and for all.
Do you think anybody ever called Gerard Rard for short? Rard.
Or Jerry?
Yeah, Jerry's a good
I don't
one.
think it would be Rard.
Rard.
Gerard.
So Vul,
Gerard. Oh, that's great.
that is, I think, the best one so far.
Yeah.
So Vul was right. Karn couldn't kill this man any more than he could kill Vul. And in rage, Karn suddenly threw out one of his massive arms, and his fist struck the wagon that the villager was standing on. The wagon lurched into the air, and Vul's men scattered further away before it smashed against the ground. What followed was stunned silence as the shocked onlookers each noticed the lifeless legs of a young boy jutting from beneath the ruined wagon. If that wasn't enough of a sight to horrify Karn, the villager then dug his fingers into his own flesh and ripped wide open the wound that had been made to implant the legacy artifact. So then the gore-covered artifacts began to spill from the villager's open wound, and Karn, without thinking, moved quickly to catch them. And once each item had fallen into Karn's arms and the villager crumpled to the ground, dead, Karn noticed that in addition to the artifacts, he now held the Touchstone. And if you don't know what the Touchstone was, we did mention it previously when Stark gave it to Vul, but it was part of the legacy, and it was an artifact that, among other things, had the power to shut down machines, stop them from working, turn them off, whatever you want to say, and it worked on contact. And even as that realization dawned on Karn, he was beginning to shut down, and he was defeated, deactivated.
Does he die? Is he dying?
No, he's not dying.
Okay.
He's not dying.
Being turned off.
I
Yes.
was ready to get very sad.
He's just being.
What
he's just
about the
being
dude
turned
that
off,
ripped out the things from his own guts? Like,
Well, we don't.
That's sad, but I'm not emotionally
Yeah, we're not.
invested
We
in
don't
him.
have
We-
any. Yeah.
We don't know that
He doesn't
person.
wear any
He's
hats.
not a character.
He's
He's not-
probably just the town pain mixer or something. He's
This
fine.
Yeah, this is our third book with Karn. Like we're pretty invested in this guy.
I mean,
at
I'm
this point.
sad. I'm sad about the boy.
like they
who
didn't
died,
pull any
too.
punches with that scene.
No, they didn't. No, they
No,
didn't.
not at all. That was crazy.
But in this defeat, a victory. In one last exertion, Karn clutched the Touchstone tighter, irretrievable in his grip. And the rest of that night, as well as the rest of the next decade, he experienced fleeting, fragmentary impressions. Karn felt Vul prying futilely at his hands of silver. He saw warriors standing in dejection and defeat. He glimpsed fire torches borne by villagers, and oars and gaff hooks, shouts and splashing waters. Vul and his men were eventually driven off the docks of the town and into the lake, and they were unable to take the silver man with them. The body of the mutilated villager was taken away by the rest of the villagers. Daylight came, and darkness after that, and daylight again. The villager was brought back, and this time made into a shrine in his honor at the foot of the silver golem statue. And like I said, Karn didn't move from that spot for another 10 years, but in that time of long reflection, he made his pacifistic vow to never again fight or kill.
Nice.
He's so good.
Yeah.
Yes, but you know, this does become a problem, right? Because he can't. He's made a vow to not fight or kill, but he also has to protect Gerard and the rest of the legacy. So you know that does become a bit of a problem, because sometimes
Right.
you do have to fight and kill to.
Sometimes
To
you do.
protect your Gerard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But anyways, next in Voul's campaign came the war clans, which he crushed one by one. The clans did resist, but they were no match for the barbarian army that Voul had bought with the legacy artifacts. So it's important to mention at this point that one of the many casualties of Voul's vengeful campaign was his own father, Cedar Kondo. So if he can't be the tribal leader, then he'll just
kill him.
wipe the tribe out. But his father wasn't his true target. He wanted to kill his stepbrother, Gerard. And fortunately for Gerard, by the time Voul reached his father's village, the heir to the legacy was no longer living with the tribe. Gerard had gone to train with another one of Urza's allies, the Morrow sorcerer Multani, in Yavimaya.
Hey, Multani.
Yeah, so we did introduce Multani in our Bloodline series, so we do know a little bit about him. And if you want to go back and listen to that, please do so, because we had a lot of fun. So, taking a bit of a sidetrack from Voul here, Gerard had gone to learn the secrets of Morrow sorcery. And remember in our Bloodline series when Multani and Rafellos switched places as the avatars of Yavimaya? It was so Multani could see the world and really get to know himself. And as the new avatar of Yavimaya, Rafellos would shape the forest and its inhabitants into a more militant place, a place that could beat back a Ferexian invasion. And Rafellos was from Llanowar, I believe, which is it's a tougher forest. And so Rafellos was successful in transforming the forest, but he apparently changed the forest too deeply. And Yavimaya didn't like that, because remember, the forest is like alive, much like Argoth was in its day, and Llanowar. There's a lot of that in Magic, is like the forest is alive. I don't know if that says something about how we treat nature, but anyways. Rafellos just being a regular elf, he also couldn't really cope with being the avatar of a living forest, so he willingly stepped down when Multani returned, because Multani being more of a the creature type is always avatar, but he's not like a mortal being. So whatever that is, I think avatars must be much better at being the what word did I use? Are they the avatars of the forest? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that would make sense if he's an avatar. It would be easier for him to be a avatar of the forest. But anyways, Multani was so grateful for what Rafellos had done for him. He offered to teach Rafellos the aforementioned secrets of Morrow sorcery. And they don't get into that in the book. I don't know what the secrets are.
They're secrets.
So
They're secrets. They don't want to let you know.
They're still secrets. So not long after that, Multani took on two more students. Gerard, who we know, was one of them, and the other was Miri, also the name of Riley's cat.
Yeah, Miri.
Look at that.
So, for starters, Miri was a cat folk, which means she looked like an anthropomorphized jungle cat. More specifically, she looked like a cougar lady with some rosette patterns on her fur. And this might be a strange thing to say, but she's hot. Like, she is stacked. Yeah, she looks good.
Yeah, she's like muscular and has like real woman breasts and real woman legs and ass, but then she has a cat head.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like cats, so
no, it's working.
It is definitely working for her. So, she was born a few years after Gerard, so she's a little bit younger, and she was from an unknown forest. Don't know if it was a living forest or not, but she was banished from her tribe for being affected by heterochromia, which is 2 different colored eyes.
Wow, you get banned for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess so. They're superstitious. So, among her people, heterochromia was believed to bring bad fortune to all who were associated with the one affected. Multani, not being concerned with such things, took the young Miri in. And when Kondo sent Gerard to train with Multani, the 2 met. Raphaelis was, of course, also in the mix, and the 4 of them lived with and learned from Multani. So Raphaelis, Gerard, and Miri became close friends in the years they spent together in Yavimea, but Miri eventually began to foster feelings of romantic love for Gerard.
Meow.
Ooh. Nice. Yes. I was gonna do like a cat sound, but yeah, no, that was just what we needed.
So over the years, Miri's feelings grew, and she had wanted to tell Gerard how she felt, but she hadn't ever found the right time. Isn't that always the way? I would just ask him out, just like so. Do you want to go go for a walk in the forest later? You know,
as more than friends, yeah.
As make that stipulation up top, yeah.
Because you can walk in the forest with friends.
You certainly can, yeah. So after several years of earnest study, Multani decided it was time to send Miri on a mission. He sent her to the deep country, and I just think of like the prairies, you know, when I hear that. But
yeah, because they're like around forests and stuff, and they're like, oh, the deep country, like,
just
like opposite way?
Rolling hills,
yeah, like.
So Gerard volunteered to accompany Miri, and she, of course, said yes to that offer, going on a solo mission with someone you have romantic feelings for.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the task that Multani wanted them to accomplish was to set up a trade deal with the Chitrin, which was another tribe of catfolk, but not the ones that exiled Miri. When Miri and Gerard arrived at the Chitrin village, the elders told them that the trade deal with Multani would be discussed the following morning. They then met a villager named Keelik, who was very interested in Miri, in a sexual way. He had romantic feelings for her.
Meow.
Now does
stealing your lines, Ross.
Does Gerard have feelings for Keelik? Because then we'd have ourselves a real love triangle.
That's a fun little love triangle.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, they could double team Miri. Yeah.
Eiffel Tower?
Mm-hmm. Or the rotisserie.
I think that's another way to put it. Yeah. Or
so
is it like a pork?
Pork roast works too.
Yeah, pork roast,
any piece of meat on a stick cooking. But in that scenario, she'd be the meat. Whereas, anyways, well, just because penises are oftentimes referred to as man meat, right? So
she'd be the lady meat.
That is super fair, yeah.
I just wanted to point that out. So that night, they all sat around a fire and listened to the village band as catfolk are wont to do.
I am
fires.
So picturing like cats just going like singing in the band.
Yeah, like I was wondering that too. Like, does Miri do like catfolk purr the way cats? That would be so cool.
So cool.
Yeah, can you imagine? So Keelik wanted to let Miri know just how interested in her he was. So he walked in between Miri and the fire and began to dance for her. It's cultural. Don't laugh.
I'm sorry. I'm picturing the episode of Friends where Phoebe's trying to seduce Chandler, and she's like moving all goofy, like she's trying to be sensual, and it's just
not
hilarious. And that's what I'm picturing him doing.
So, even though Miri was in love with Gerard, she had to admit that the Catman that was dancing for her was a fine specimen indeed. But she did not want him the way she wanted Gerard. She doesn't want all that fur, I think.
Yeah.
Which I bet is a fetish for like furry creatures, in the fantasy or sci-fi universe, right? Like humans are
being more furry,
hairless, but it's even like with with us, like some people like a hairy chest, some people don't.
Sure.
It's totally all that. Some people like that Kojak look. Some people like hair past the shoulders. to each their own. But anyways, Miri just tried to ignore the dancing cat man. I'm a cat man. So Killick eventually asked her in catling, which is their language, to dance with him, to which Miri declined. No, thank you. Gerard, not understanding their cat language, and he's like, that cat language, told Miri that she should dance with Killick lest the elders get offended and the trade deal goes south. Because remember, they're there for that trade deal.
That definitely happens.
Which this offended Miri, so she ran off into the darkness of the surrounding forest, and Gerard went after her. And Gerard didn't find her, but Killick had followed them both, and he and Gerard had a heated argument about Miri. It was basically about how Killick thought that Miri should be with her own kind, and also that he thought Miri was a kind of slave to Multani, and the argument eventually came to a sword fight between the two, which is where Miri hopped back in to stop them from killing each other. She was like hiding behind some bushes and listening. Miri was able to stop the fight, but Killick would only relent if Miri walked the spirit path, another ritual, among catfolk that one used when making a difficult decision, sort of like a vision quest, it sounds like.
Sure.
So Killick intuited that Miri was in love with Gerard, and also that Gerard did not feel the same way about her, which is maybe a catfolk thing. The Catman felt very strongly that Miri should stay with her own kind, and they had some impactful things to say about that.
Catman.
I'm a cat man.
The only question is whether she comes back with me or whether she chooses to live her life alone. I am not alone.
Miri's anger was fast being replaced by impatience.
I have my teacher and my friends. Is that enough, though? Will you live a loveless, joyless life among the humans? Do you think he'd ever accept one as different as you into his bed?
Yeah,
I
I
love
don't get
having
it.
kitties in my bed.
Yeah, me too. I think she's hot. So, anyways, after their blowout, Gerard figured out how Miri felt about him, and she was shook enough. She shook enough to take the spirit walk. Part of the walk is confronting your spirit beast. Miri's was a giant black saber tooth, which is kind of
cool.
surprising. Like, you just go for the cat thing. Anyways, Miri had to defeat the Sabretooth in a fight, and if she did, the spirit would kill either Gerard or Killick, whichever Miri chose. Which is, like, sounds pretty good, right? Yeah, it's like problems are solved. I choose this guy, boom, no problem over here. You just don't have to worry about him living his life alone. Anyways, to which Miri replied,
Suppose I do not wish you to kill either. Then you will not defeat me. I am your destiny. Make your choice, or let the spirit way take you where it will. But I will feed on the choices you leave aside.
Sick. So they fought, and Miri bested the spirit, but when the time came for her to choose who would live, she wanted them both to live. Actually, at one point, when the spirit was trying to get them to decide, the spirit asked Gerard if he wanted her, and Gerard's reply was,
I love her as I would love a sister.
He said at last.
How can it be otherwise? We are too different.
Miri felt her heart die within her. It was as she had feared.
Oh.
Oof.
Yeah, that's too bad.
That's a big oof.
Yeah, that's a hard friend zone right there.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you know,
friend zoned.
I'm not sure if they'd be able to procreate together. I think it'd be super cool if they could. But if that's Gerard's hang up here, that she's too different, I think he's got a little bit of personal growth to do. You know?
Yeah.
Because she's a beautiful cat lady, and like she's a
Oh,
warrior.
totally.
She's smart. She's learned at least some of the secrets of Mara sorcery. Like, come on, man, she's got 2 different colored eyes. That's cool. That's a
Yeah.
Bowie thing.
That is.
Yeah.
She's like the
Legs
David
for
Bowie
days.
of cats. Yeah.
Exactly. So, anyways, like I said, Miri defeated the cat spirit, and she chose Gerard as the one who would live, and she and the spirit had this exchange.
So you have made your choice, catling.
It was the cat's voice from behind her. Miri turned. Fiery eyes regarded her.
I love him.
She said.
He does not love you.
The words were like a slap across the face.
After his fashion, he does. After his fashion,
The cat agreed.
though you will come to find it is not enough. No. After you have died a little each day, watching him, knowing he will not hold your heart, you will come to find it is so. If that's the price, I'll pay it.
She said. And so Miri and Gerard watched the cat spirit cut down Killick. But remember that this is all happening in Miri's mind, so everybody is all right, and the two men know nothing of what just transpired.
Oh!
He's still
Because
alive.
it's a vision quest. Yeah.
Fun.
So before the vision ended, the spirit left Miri with the grim prophecy that the path she had chosen would lead to Gerard's death. Miri and Gerard left the next day, and it's unknown if they ever secured the trade deal for Multani.
It's unknown if they got the trade deal.
Yeah, they don't mention it.
That's
Holy
zany.
crap!
Oh,
That's the point of the.
Hey, I didn't
Yeah.
write the book.
Is that the end of the story?
So
It's fair.
So that's where Gerard was during the time period that Vul was consolidating his power. Multani heard about what was happening in Jamura at that time, and taking a precaution, sent Gerard, Miri, and Raphelos into hiding, which was a good call on Multani's part, because after Vul had crushed the Jamuran war clans, his next stop was Yavimaya to look for his brother. Unable to find him, and with everything native to him destroyed, he wondered what was next for him. And one night in his command tent, he asked Stark,
Is this my destiny then, fat man? I am the leader of no one now. Where is the power you promised me?
I don't know why he calls him Fat Man. He's not a big guy. That was a weird...
Maybe he meant rat man because he's a rat fink.
I'm a rat man! I'm going to have to watch that movie with Tim Robbins and Lawrence... with Martin Lawrence after this. What is that called? Anyways, there's a whole part where Tim Robbins is on fire and they play the Scatman song. I just love it. Maybe I'll just watch that part.
Yeah, you can probably find it on YouTube.
So getting back to their conversation, this is Stark now talking.
You wanted revenge? You got it. This was just the first stage. Now that you've proven your worth, you're ready for your true role.
Stark produced an object. It resembled a lantern, but was shaped in ways quite foreign. He set it down on Vul's desk.
The gate key.
He explained.
It's time for your audience. Are you ready?
Bonesaw is ready.
Oh my god.
Vul drew himself up coldly.
There is no reason to remain here. Do whatever you must.
So Stark activated the device, and a green light sprang from the center of the lantern.
The Green Lantern. Speaking of Spider-Man.
Yeah, where's Ryan Reynolds when you need him, hey?
Or you just. Oh boy.
The light created a glowing circle on the floor of the tent, and Stark beckoned Vul to stand on it. Vul did, and his body was suddenly swirled into a black spire of smoke that was drawn into the lantern. When the smoke was absorbed, Stark deactivated the device and pocketed it. He then casually left the tent. Before leaving the encampment, he smashed the device, hoping that his masters wouldn't ever be able to drag him back. And that's where we'll pick back up for part 2 of Rath Storm.
Bada boom.
Yeah, next week we'll tell you, we'll explain Vul's fate, and we'll also explain how Miri, Raphelos, and Gerard became crew members of the skyship Weatherlight.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
spicy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I hope everybody has enjoyed this this first installment of Rath Storm. I think this is going to be at least 3 parts. But like I said, we'll be back next week with the full contingent of hosts. But Eric, before we hop off, we didn't do this at the top of the show. How can listeners get in touch with us?
So people can definitely find us over at Turbo Soaring the Podcast on Instagram. You can send us messages directly through email. TurboSoaringThePodcast@gmail.com. We throw everything up on the YouTube, so Turbo Soaring the Podcast is the best way to find us. And if you are like what we're doing here, we do have something that's called the Patreon page. So over at patreon.com/TurboSoaring is where you can find us.
That's right. Thank you very much. And thanks for listening. Ainsley, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. having me. It was fun, gentlemen.
And Riley,
Thanks.
thank you for joining us for your first lore episode.
Now you can't
Yeah.
lie about
Yeah.
being a lore virgin.
That's right.
To the lore.
Exactly.
You can.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess you would have to lie. What am I saying?
No, it's a lot of fun.
All right, everybody. Yeah, we'll be back next week. And until then, just take it easy out there.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Enjoy the lore.
Turn one soul ring.